I heard a great phrase the other day of comparison is the killer of joy. And it's so true, because there are no two individuals on this planet who are absolutely identical with the same life trajectory and thoughts and all of this. So why are we comparing? They're two totally different things.
Welcome back to episode 15 of Head Right Out. Episode 15, can't believe it. My name is Zoe Langley-Wathen and I talk to resilient women in the hope to inspire you to head out of your comfort zone and do something that pushes you, that pushes your comfort zone boundary beyond what you previously thought you were capable of. It will hopefully make you stronger, more resilient and more able to live a happy and fulfilling life. Now, before we get into today's conversation, I'd just like to recap on last week's little announcement about the Sports Podcast Awards. So as episode 14 landed, so did the news that Head Right Out had been shortlisted. So it'd gone from its nomination to being shortlisted for the Sports Podcast Awards. Really exciting news, but this is where I need your support, please. Thank you so much for everybody who has voted already. It's meant that among the 8 contenders in the Best Urban and Adventure category, Head Right Out is currently sitting at rank 4. It goes up and down, however, and so I really need your help. If you could hop into sportspodcastawards.com, register with your email to vote, and then go into the categories in the top right-hand section. Choose the Best Urban and Adventure category and click on Head Right Out. And then you hit the red button, which is vote for your favourite. Hopefully, Head Right Out will be your favourite. So thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. Now, because this is a longer episode this week, I've decided not to add a Head Right Out moment, so we'll have that to look forward to next week instead. But do please still keep sending them in. I have got a very small reserve of Head Right Out moments now that I can start using for future episodes. So I would like to keep that little reserve topped up. So I've always got something to select. It would be really great if I can start selecting Head Right Out moments that are relevant to the guest that I'm chatting with. You can email me those to zoe@headrightout.com or just message me on any of the socials. So Jo Bradshaw is who we're chatting to today. In 2008, Jo was a business advisor living a very risk-free life. But now, as an expedition leader, outdoor instructor and public speaker, she walks the walk by taking students and adults on adventures here in the UK and all over the world, sharing her passion for the outdoors, as well as talking the talk to schools, groups and businesses. Say yes now and work it out later. That was her late father's mantra, and she encourages others to embrace those words too. This is going to be a superb conversation. It's a little bit longer than normal, but we really dive deep, particularly into the topic of menopause. We talk about the miles that Jo needs to cover in her latest challenges, the one that she's aiming for and the one she's previously done. We talk about her relationship with the mountains, and we talk about how the menopause has impacted her over the last couple of years. Enough of me chatting. Let's go and hear Jo's conversation with me. Okay, well, today I am so excited to be talking to friend and fellow adventurer of extreme proportions, Jo Bradshaw. This is so exciting. Jo is a former no-saying, height-hating, risk-averse comfort lover who turned her life around by saying yes just a little bit more often. Standing on top of Everest in 2016, yes, you heard that right, standing on top of Everest, having survived the earthquake in 2015 whilst at Camp 1 on the mountain. She did wonder how on earth she got there. But Everest is just one chapter in Jo's story and not the whole story. And I'm pleased that she is here to share more of that with us. Welcome, Jo, to Head Right Out.
Thank you very much for having me, Zoe. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you.
Oh, I'm so pleased that you said yes, because I think it must have been 2014 that I came to hear you speak the first time. I travelled all the way from Dorset up to Brecon to come and hear you talk at Cotswold Outdoor. And I was utterly captivated. It was probably no more than about 45 minutes of you talking, but you had me and everybody else in that room on the edge of their seats. I had no idea what you had been through to get where you are now, or to get where you were then at that point. Obviously, a lot has happened since then. Actually, I think maybe it was 2015. It must have been 2015 that you talked there. So you've done this. You have headed right out yourself. You've headed out of your comfort zone. Can you talk us through how you went from being this person who was fearing heights and being so risk averse to literally standing on top of the world?
I know, it's all a bit bonkers, really. And I still feel that someone's going to tap me on the shoulder and go, back in your box, love. This is your life. But it is my life, and it's real. And I need to own it as well, because I think we're very good at dumbing down our achievements and sort of how far we've come, rather than celebrating them with a good attitude, you know. And when I was in my early 30s, I had a very regular life, and I'm not, you know, it's everybody's life is different, but I was still hoping to have a family, and I had a good job, well paid, and I was single at the time, and I was in my office, I think on a Friday afternoon, sort of, you know, doing the whole playing post offices thing, like we do, or used to do, not anymore. I was just looking for something on the internet for work, and up popped this parachute jump for Asthma UK, weirdly. And I just looked at it and thought, well, I have nothing in my life that sort of wows me at the moment. And you know, I had a lovely life, great friends, 2 fabulous dogs, good job, as I said, but it was all very safe. So I thought I'll, you know, add a little spice into the mix. And I had a terrible fear of heights at the time. The type of fear that if I was going across a suspension bridge or something, I just wanted to fling myself off it and fly, which obviously is not going to end very well. So I avoided any situation where that would have been an issue. And so I signed up to do this parachute jump, and a good friend of mine who worked at the same company as me offered to drive me up to the jump site. Her words were, just in case you can't drive home. Which was like, great. But I think, knowing me as she did, she actually just wanted to make sure I got there, because I used to say yes to a lot of things and then say no. So, you know, and it probably would have happened with this parachute jump, you know, even though I'd raised a bit of money through my colleagues in the office, I would have come up with this great excuse of why I couldn't have gone and done it. So she was my sort of backstop, really, and she made sure I got there. And after that jump, you get into the marketing sort of system of the charities, and there's this sort of months golden period after you do a challenge for charity where they want you to come and do another one. You're still on a bit of a high, you're still chatty about it. So they sent me this flyer for a bike ride in Peru. And I used to cycle a lot as a kid, hadn't been on my bike for ages, never been to Peru. I hadn't camped since I was probably about 8 years old, even though my parents and my brother were very outdoorsy, but not in, we were sort of more about boats than camping. And I had it on my desk at work, and Caroline, who'd taken me to the jump site, came into my office and said, "Oh, brilliant. So that's the next thing." And I came up with this whole ream of excuses of why I couldn't do it. You know, I didn't have a bike. How was I going to raise the money? How was I going to get fit? How was I going to get time? You know, all of these things that we naturally, when we're scared, we naturally come up with these reasons of, you know, no, I can't possibly do that. And my last reason to her is I didn't have the money for the deposit. And so she just sort of came in and said, well, that's fine. I'll pay for you and you pay me back in installments. So at that point, she'd just blown everything out of the water. And she's like, right, we can work on everything else, but I just want you to start, just sign on the dotted line and we'll get going. And it's having friends like that who they really have your back and they push you gently or with quite a bit of a shove at times, because they know you are capable of so much more than you give yourself credit. And she clearly saw something in me that I didn't, or she just wanted me to get more out of life than I was. And it was after that bike ride in Peru, it led on to another couple of bike rides with the same company, which was Discover Adventure, which are based in Salisbury, where I now live. And it's just the little conversations you have and those little sliding door moments where on the third bike ride, I was just chatting to the leader and saying, how did you get into this? And she said, look, you've got all the right attributes. So send in your CV to Discover Adventure and we could take you on as crew and you can do it in your holidays from work. And I was like, wow, this is just really exciting, So they start you off with London to Paris trips and you work on up from that. So in 2007, that's exactly what I did. But it was all quite fast-tracked for me at that point because I then got to lead a trek in China. I was supposed to be assisting on a bike ride in Vietnam, but they took me off that because somebody had come off China, and China's a very simple trek to lead. And I was working with an amazing crew. So all of my logistics experience and work and all my managerial experience and work is very transferable with leading people. And I was working with a mountain leader and we had a doctor with us anyway, because it was a charity group, and the Chinese crew are fantastic. So they were like, well, we'll send you out there and give you a go, because unless you do these things, you're never going to know how you're going to fare. And it went all right, amazingly. So
you sound surprised.
I was surprised. I was kind of winging it quite a lot of the time, But I learned so much from Emma, who I was working with. And I had a group of Girl Guide leaders. There were 40 of them. So they're pretty sort of savvy ladies. So, and China's very simple one compared to what I get up to these days. So it's all of that, it was like a sort of the perfect trip that I could have started on. And they'd also, at the time, I was talking to the office about moving down to Salisbury and working in the office and running a section of the company. So I was just about to give up a really well-paid job. I was about to rent out my own house. I was about to get rid of my fancy 4x4. I was about to move all of the things that we think in life we need to obtain and achieve in order to be successful. But this success that I had in society's terms wasn't making me happy. And it wasn't, and I'm not sure what it was. I think because originally when I left school, I thought my life was going to be about working with horses and being part of that world. And then that ended when I was in my mid-20s. And I think I just was really lost in life for about 10 years. Even though I did well in business and I worked my work through management and I worked in a few different industries. So I got loads of experience and really good, relevant stuff. When I moved to Discover Adventure at the beginning of 2008, I thought, well, I've got to give this a go and I can always move back. I know I'm an employable person. The company that I just left was like, well, if it doesn't work out, come back. So it wasn't as if I was cutting everything off, but I'm like, no, I've got to give this a go, because if I'm not happy with what I'm doing, I need to go and make and find that happiness from somewhere else. So it was a massive leap of faith, but it all worked out. And it wasn't all fantastic roses and, parties and everything. I worked really hard and went through some really difficult times. And, I think when you do that whole big life change, it takes you a while to settle back into being you. And it certainly did for me. And my dog died and he had cancer, bless him. And so all these sort of big life things. But I sort of settled into working at Discover Adventure. I led a load of trips, did a load of recce's, got tons of experience over a 2-year period, got my mountain leader, and then beginning of 2010 went freelance. I had no thoughts of ever climbing anything big. My fear of heights was, I was learning to manage it, because you have to learn to manage it in order to lead people. But it was actually, I found it quite a good thing to have had, or still have, because it made me human to my clients. I wasn't that sort of, oh yeah, I can do everything type person. So, I used to say to them, I had a massive fear of heights, and I still manage it really well. But occasionally I'm sort of a bit taken aback and they're like, oh gosh, you are human. And that's a really nice, it's that vulnerability I think is really important.
So you do still have moments where that fear of heights comes back to you and affects you?
Yeah, because it's not, people say, well, it's like when I say to people, well, climbing Kilimanjaro, I'm scared of heights, but your feet are on the ground the whole time. So it's not the altitude that's an issue for a lot of people. It's more about the exposure. So if you're climbing ladders or going across suspension bridges or you're near an edge, that is more of the issue rather than the physical height. So I learnt ways to manage it. So I basically, in my head, I've got this little character. So there's a Bigfoot and there's this sort of gnarly character coming up through a drain hole. And I'm just basically, and he's fear, or she, wherever it is fear. And I'm just sort of pushing the lid on my fear. So for me, it works really well. And I also use these two characters called Positive Polly and Negative Nelly. And it's not just for heights, it's for all sorts of different situations that may be tricky, where I need to sort of tap into another part of my psyche that goes, okay, so Negative Nelly is having a good old chat with me saying that I'm useless or, this situation's not going to work. And then Positive Polly comes in with the sort of rational side of life. And occasionally when I'm having a really tough time, whether it's personally or mountains or, when I'm leading, I do flick my left shoulder because Nelly sits on my left shoulder and I do flick them off because it's a physical get out of my head. I don't want you in my life, because I think fear is a very powerful thing when it's used in the right way, and everybody has fears of something. So yeah, I think it's when somebody says to me, oh yeah, I'm always happy and I have no fears, it's like, oh okay.
It's a bit concerning, isn't it, really?
Concerning. It is actually, yeah, because that's just not a natural state for a human to be in. Hormones and life and rhythms and all sorts of things happen in your life, and if you suppress all of that, it's going to come out at some point. So yeah,
I think we need those fears as well. I know I have so many hang-ups, so many fears, and I've never been trying to squish them. I don't want them to go completely, because that's part of me and who I am, and as you said, it's what makes the experience even more powerful. But I think to learn to face those fears and to navigate them and manage them, I think, that's where the magic comes in.
Yeah, definitely. And I went to climb an 8,000, so I'm jumping ahead quite a bit here, but I went to climb another 8,000 metre peak in 2013 called Manaslu. And just before I went out there, I read a book written by Rebecca Stevens, who's the first British woman to climb Everest from the south side and then subsequently do all the 7 summits. So that's the highest point on each of the 7 continents. And she said in her book, your eyes are like a camera lens and you focus on what's important. And for me on Manaslu, that was great. And that's been a bit of a game changer in my leadership as well, because we got to the first ladder in the icefall on Manaslu. I was like, oh my God. And that's where I can remember just being taken back to that fearful moment of, oh, I'm just going to die, rather than, okay, how do I do this? And I remember I just sort of suddenly got this focus of, so it's the rungs of the ladder that are going to help me stay upright and not fall off. I'm attached to a rope, so if I do fall off, I'm not going to go far. I've got all the right equipment and the people around me to get me out, because you work as teams on mountains like that. And I've got the skill set to do it. So it's bringing that, I was almost kind of tunnel visioned. And it's very true about your eyes are like a camera lens and you focus. So you can focus at all, I could have focused at all these big gaps in between the rungs of the ladder, and there's a 300-meter crevasse underneath me and something might fall on my head and I might die. Get all dramatic about it. But actually, it really is about keeping it simple and making sure that, A, you're not putting yourself or you're not putting others in danger by spending too much time in those areas, but just get on with it. So, and it's having champions in your life. So Caroline was very much a champion in my life when I started in adventure, and then that went on to being a friend of mine called Rolf Oostra, who runs 360 Expeditions, who I now work with, and he runs it with his wife, Marnie. And I signed up to do Mirror Peak with 360 in April 2011 when I hit 40. Well, I hit 40 in the March, and I'd already worked with him for Discover Adventure. We did Everest Base Camp, and I remember him standing when we were on Kalapatar, which is a little peak overlooking the Khumbu Icefall and the Khumbu Glacier, and you can see Everest. And he was like, that's a goal to do the 8,000. And he's an incredibly experienced mountaineer, but it's finding the right clients to do these things with. So, and I was like, yeah, whatever, that's just crazy. And, why would you want to do that? And it's expensive. So again, all of these barriers were coming out of, why would I want to do something like that? When probably in me was like, actually, that would be quite cool. Yeah. So not that I realised it then. So we went and climbed Mirror Peak, and I think he saw something in me again that I didn't see, and he pushed me to go and do other stuff. And it was great for my guiding, because it's always good when you're leading expeditions is to remind yourself what it's like to be in a client's shoes and what it's like to have that sort of edge of discomfort, which you become very used to. It becomes a very normal state when you're leading trips. So it's very good to sort of push yourself a little bit more. And it was from then on, really, that it all sort of started taking off.
So what was the best bit of advice then, do you think, that you've been given by somebody else, apart from what you read in that book? Have you been given advice by a mentor, an instructor, or just somebody, a colleague that you've worked with, about facing fears, about pushing yourself through?
Yeah, very much so. So I'll transport you to Nepal in 2010 when I was leading Everest Base Camp with Rolf. So we had a group of 30 or so clients, and I was still in the stage of, I'm not sure about these. There's lots of suspension bridges on the way up and on the way back. And underneath the suspension bridges, there's usually raging torrents of a river or big chasms, and they do wobble around and they don't look particularly safe, although they are very, very safe. And I remember getting to the first one, and I was initially quite far up the front I was just chatting to one of the clients, and then I just stopped before and I was like, go on, go, everybody go through. And Rolf came up to me, he's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm just, waiting to see if anyone needs a hand going across. He's like, Jo, don't mother people at the very start of an expedition, because if they can't do this bridge, then they've got about 5 or 6 others to worry about, and the altitude and all this. He was like, don't mother people. Give them a helping hand, definitely. But I'm not sure he realised quite how nervous I was at the time. So I was kind of using it as a little bit of a crux. So I was trying to find somebody who was more scared than I was. Yeah. And then it's easier to focus on, them rather than yourself. Fortunately, we had a very capable group of clients and nobody needed a hand. So I just had to put my brave pants on and go and do it. But it still resonates these days when I'm doing, whether it's teaching DV or climbing 6,000 meter peaks or what have you with clients. And it's like, give them all the information and then they have to do it. And you can help them along and you can be their champion. But if you try and lead them in front and, tell them this step here and that step there, they're not going to learn it for themselves. Mm. And that then causes guide dependency. And on mountains, that's a really bad thing. You want people to be independent. I want people to go away from my expeditions with a greater amount of knowledge, about what they're capable of, but also technical knowledge. So they can then go out and do it themselves or want to come back and do bigger things, more technical things. So, yeah, it was a very powerful message. And it was also a powerful message to me is that I don't mother myself. Sometimes I just got to suck it up and get on with this.
Do it.
Yeah,
that actually leads quite nicely into, I was going to talk about your expeditions a little bit later, but we can do that now because I'm interested to know why you think, because obviously you've now led so many expeditions and you've seen the transitions, or not transitions, the transformations that happen for people. There's obviously a great deal of benefit two people. But why do you think then that women in particular seem so hesitant and so scared to adventure? What's your take on that?
I think adventure is seen, it's a very white middle class male dominated scene. And it's definitely changing, which is great. But I think if you're not a particularly confident individual, or you've always been told that it's not for you, or, you know, that side of things, then you start believing that. You know, it's like, why would I go and do something when someone's just going to tell me that I'm useless at it? You know, it's that horrible perception of yourself that is so unfair to yourself to keep telling yourself that stuff, unless you just go and give it a go, you know, and you might find you don't like it, and that's fine. But you've gone and done it. It's like anything, isn't it? It's learning a language or learning how to dance. You're making yourself vulnerable, and that's quite a hard space to be in, because it opens yourself up to taking advice or people telling you that things that you may or may not want to hear, or it's the whole comfort zone thing. And I think I actually had one lady on a trip who had been led by a gentleman who's absolutely amazing leader, a very good friend of mine. So when I was then leading her next trip, she said, well, I'm not sure I want to come with you because you're female and I don't know you. I was like, okay, well, firstly, you have no choice. If you want to do this trip, I'm leading it. So it was for a big charity, and that was the way it is. So, and I said, you may actually learn new things from me. You know, you've been put in a very good place by Dave, and he's taught you a lot, but you can always learn new things. And I may have a slightly different style, so you may actually get out of it something completely different, because Dave was her comfort zone. You know, she knew how he worked, she knew what he was up to, and I wasn't. She didn't know quite how I was going to be, and she absolutely flew on the expedition. You know, because she then opened herself up to this whole new way of learning. And I think that's so important. You're not coming on an expedition with me for me to be at the front saying, come on, follow me. I don't work like that. I lead from the back so I can see what's going on up front. You can tell from the back of somebody how they are, you know, whether they're walking tall and striding out, or whether they're a little bit hunched and a bit slow. You can tell a lot from a group by just seeing them from the back. And for her, I think it was putting her in a very vulnerable position that she maybe didn't want to be in. I think if people are very much, I think as women, and particularly those who've had kids as well, you're very in control of everything that goes on in your life. Whereas on an expedition, we kind of strip that away from you. And it's quite a hard space to be in. I give you all the information. You need to get up in the morning, pack your kit, have breakfast, and we'll go for a walk. And it's as simple as that. Listen to the advice I give you. The rest will take care of itself. But I think for some, it's quite hard to get into that space. And again, fear of failure and everything. But unless you give things a go, and you do fail at things occasionally, you're not going to learn and you're not going to grow.
I absolutely give that. I mean, that's what I say to my students all the time. The message I've been trying to deliver for 10 years. And don't risk failing. Just give it a go. And actually going wrong, doing things wrong, we need to be able to do that in order to be able to learn. So can you describe a moment then, or a person's situation where you have really witnessed that transformation, that benefit, that somebody, you know, maybe somebody started off, you know, feeling very limited and very unable? I don't know. Do you have something that you can recount for us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate because I do have quite a few clients that do come on trips regularly with me, which is a lovely place to be. And they go off and do other things with other people, but it just so happens that what I have been doing, like Kilimanjaro is a great starting point, and then maybe they've wanted to go to Nepal and do, I don't know, 6,000 feet there, and then maybe they wanted to go to Elbrus and try something else in Russia, and then maybe Aconcagua. So you see them from the start on Kili. They've probably maybe camped as a kid. They've never been in a group situation. They've never had to be in the cold for 7 days or altitude. So all of these things adding on, it's quite a difficult place to be. But they come away from it with a sort of, it's not an inflated attitude or arrogance, but it's just a feeling of self-worth. Whether they've summited the mountain or not, they've achieved something they never thought they could. So then they're like, oh, I wonder what's next. And it's pretty much what happened to me. So, well, if I can do that, so what else am I capable of? And, you know, you may go out to Nepal, so it's a 3-week expedition rather than 10 days. You're in tea houses, you're cold more often, you're higher a lot more. We then stick crampons on your feet. So you're like,
it's a bit different.
But teach you all the skills you need to know before we actually go onto the proper stuff. And again, whether it's success, it's success or failure is a very different thing. Because when I went and did Mira Peak in 2011, we couldn't reach the summit. We got 200 meters below the summit, and that was our top, because there was a big crevasse blocking our route, and at the time nobody had ladders for us to go over, and we weren't set up for that type of extra technical terrain anyway. So yeah, 6,276 meters is where we got, and to me that was a massive success. You know, I had managed to get up there, and we got all the way back without injury, without any major issues. So to me, it was a successful expedition, whereas to other people, it's like, but you didn't stand on the summit. It's like, that's not the point.
It's not about that, is it? Yeah.
My whole 3-week expedition isn't about one 5-minute moment.
No.
You know, and I've had clients like that before where they're so focused on that one point, that one moment in time, they forget to enjoy and to grow from the whole experience. And I understand that when you're spending a lot of money on an expedition, it's a trip of a lifetime, and you do all the training and you get all the kit and everything, and then you don't hit that goal. It can be disappointing, but I always say to my clients to begin with is that the summit is not guaranteed. And I definitely saw that in Everest 2015. You know, the summit is definitely not guaranteed, but I guarantee you will come out of here with some amazing memories and having met some amazing people. So it's really interesting seeing people progress up through the mountains, depending on what they want to do. Sometimes they take a little step back and go, oh, I wonder if I can do this. And it's like, well, put into place everything you've done before, because it's the same stuff. You're walking, whether you're walking with crampons on or you're walking with your normal walking boots, you're still putting one foot in front of the other. It is that simple. You know, don't complicate it, because then it makes everything too much. And for me, I'm just thinking about the next step. That's all I'm thinking about. But it's fantastic to see clients progress, and then they come back on another expedition and they're not the newbie, and they've got a bit of experience, so they can help anyone else that's had that, who is maybe new to the company or new to the trip or new to me. So
that must be really rewarding to witness
hugely.
that.
Yeah, and I missed it so much during lockdown, and even teaching D&V, because I spend a lot of my spring and summer months with Duke of Edinburgh groups, and you get them as sort of these raw individuals when they're 14 doing bronze because their mum and dad have told them they have to do it, and they've got kit that doesn't fit and the rucksack's too big, and they bring all sorts of things they needn't have done. It's just through knowledge. And then you see them through to gold, and they're these sort of amazingly independent individuals who have now got all the right kit, and they're like, yeah, we've got this. And it is just amazing to watch and be part of. And, you know, the individuals you have from the beginning of an expedition to the end are completely different. So, yeah, it's so rewarding.
And it's empowering for you as well as being empowering for them.
Yeah, very much. And I learn so much on every expedition, a little bit more about human psychology, you know, and I've done a huge amount of expeditions, and you get to understand what makes people tick or how to deal with situations. But there's always going to be stuff that crops up that you're thinking, okay, so which door am I going to open to make this one work? And people are fascinated. They're fascinating. You know, I'm very fascinated by people, and I like hearing their stories and what makes them tick. And, you know, everybody has a story to tell, whether they think they have or haven't. Everybody has a story to tell. So,
yes, I absolutely believe that. You know, with Head Right Out, I want to talk to people like yourself, because you've been at the beginning of the transition from going from the risk averse, what were you, business advisor, weren't you, I think?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And height hating to where you are now. You know, I want to talk to people like yourself. I want to talk to people also who have experienced just stepping out on their first 5-mile run.
Yeah.
You know, because that is somebody else's Everest, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just about the biggest and the best challenge, the longest, the most challenging. For some, it's just so challenging.
Yeah.
Just getting out of bed in the morning, just stepping outside that front door, just going and doing something on their own.
Yeah.
And
I hear it a lot, you know, oh, well, I haven't done as much as you have, but I've done this. It's like, you know, I heard a great phrase the other day of comparison is the killer of joy. And it's so true, because there are people in, you know, the world that I operate in, sort of mountaineers and expedition guides and everything, who have done so much more than me and will always have done more than me. But then there are people that maybe not so interested in what I'm up to, but love doing desert treks and all of that sort of stuff. And there are no two individuals on this planet who are absolutely identical with the same life trajectory and thoughts and all of this. So why are we comparing? Why would I compare my expedition to somebody who's rode the Atlantic or crossed Antarctica? So they're two totally different things, you know, or jobs or families or anything. So
that's an incredible saying though. So would you like to just repeat it again, just so that it really sinks in?
No, comparison is the killer of joy.
Yeah.
I think somebody else said comparison is the thief of joy, which actually is, whichever way you want to hold it and take it, it's definitely there, because you hear it quite often, you know, it's like story top trumps, and I hear it on expeditions and people are having a conversation about something and then, well, I've done this, well, that's nothing, I've done that, and it's like, oh gosh,
don't go there.
Have that moment, you know. I may have climbed Everest, that's just one tiny bit of my life. I mean, it's quite a big bit, but you know, it doesn't define who I am. No. I've done lots of other things, you know. On my birthday I ran nearly 30 miles on my 50th in March this year. I've never run 30 miles in my life before. I've never even run a marathon. So I was so excited about that. And someone said, well, you've climbed Everest. I'm like, you can't compare them. It doesn't, there's no comparison whatsoever. And actually my mile an hour on the hour for every hour for 24 hours was at the point my Everest, because it was blooming hard.
I was going to say, I bet that was absolutely exhausting. And the mind, that takes a completely different mindset again as well, doesn't it? You know, maybe you're partway through sleeping and you've got to get up, you've got to go and walk a mile.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't sleep.
You didn't sleep?
I didn't sleep. No, I made sure I didn't sleep. And it was very much, I was very keen to once again put myself into that uncomfortable mode. I think for me, as an expedition leader, is that I need to remind myself what it's like to be in that zone. So when I'm on Killy next and we're doing summit night and others are definitely in that uncomfortable zone, I do remember what it's like to be there, because you can easily forget. And I've climbed Killy so many times now that it's, you know, second nature, but summit night is really hard. I still find it hard. There's a lot going on for me mentally. There's a huge amount going on, even if everybody's just nicely in a line. You know, shit can happen really quickly.
Yeah,
and also it's a tough climb. So yeah, you need to remind yourself what uncomfortable feels like, because it's nice when you're not there, but it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, you've got to keep on top of that.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a question for you then, and it's just exited my head. So I think I wanted to talk to you about your other challenges, but I also, if it's okay with you, I would love to just find out how navigating your late 40s and now 50, because you're the same age as me.
Yeah.
We are just weeks apart, our birthdays. So yeah, I'm just interested to know how you've been navigating that as well, because that's been a whole new challenge, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe. So challenges in terms of expeditions, other expeditions, or your own fundraising challenges? What's been going on there?
So in, when was it? 2014, when Everest became a thing in my life, I was very fortunate to gain a sponsor, and he then he said, go and fundraise for a children's mental health charity Place to Be. And it was a no-brainer for me. Mental health is such an important part of our lives, and to be able to support charity that does that for kids in more vulnerable positions than myself is super important as well. And it gave me a very different focus. So it meant that the climb wasn't just about me and what I was doing. It's about a much bigger picture. And I also took 6 Duke of Edinburgh Gold students with me. So they trekked to Everest Base Camp, and then they climbed Low Shea East, which is a 6,000 metre peak, with us. And then fortunately they went back before the earthquake struck. So thank God for that. They were safely at home by a few days. And then, so that was sort of my early 40s, and then moving into sort of the Everest and what came after that. And then my father passed away 4 years ago in 2017. And I think that coincided with perimenopause. So the last 4 years have just been a whole host of mixed emotions, grief, which is a very hard thing to get a handle on. And I think my grief was masked by the perimenopause, or actually the perimenopause was masked by my grief. And I wasn't really understanding what was going on. I knew that I was changing and feeling different things, and I wasn't sure. I thought it was grief, because I think we get to sort of late 40s, and I know the menopause can hit many women earlier than that, but we get to late 40s, it's not going to happen to me. Of course it is. Of course it is. Yeah, and then when I hit 50 this year, I'm like, I need to do something about this now. And HRT has saved my life, really. So, but in amongst all of that, obviously we've had the last 2 years of COVID, and I was a Tesco delivery driver for 11 months from the beginning of first lockdown. And you layer all of that up, and you just think, wow, it's been a few years, it's been a full-on few years, and trying to be everything to everyone else when you're in the depths of despair yourself is blooming hard. And I used to get back from expeditions before COVID hit, and I'd be wiped out for about a week, And I'm thinking, this is crazy. This can't be age related. And I just couldn't really put the whole jigsaw puzzle together. And now that I have, it's like, that is why I forgot how to tie a knot on Vincent, 2 years ago. That is why I'm getting words. That's why the fatigue is so bad. And it's all of that side of stuff. So
how did you make that connection, Jo? What was it that suddenly made you go, oh, that's what it is?
So the beginning of this year, I think my menopause symptoms kind of ramped up quite a bit. And I've had migraines for a very long time, since my late teens. But I had sort of 2 or 3 very bad ones a year. But this was coming much more, every 2 or 3 weeks. And I was thinking, this is not normal. The fatigue was unbelievable. And when you're tired, and it's not just a bad night's sleep, because also menopause causes sleep problems. So you don't want to exercise. You're really tired. Your appetite goes up because your hormone level change. So your hunger response is not kept in check by hormones that used to do it. And your feeling full response is also out of whack. So then you put on weight, then you don't feel like exercising anymore. And then you feel rubbish about yourself, pretty much. And then, tinnitus and forgetfulness, brain fog, unbelievable, anxiety, all of those things together. And I just thought, and I had a phone call from a doctor just before my 50th birthday in March, talking about something. And I said to her about these symptoms, because I now know my mum started going through peri at 45, so it would make sense. And the doctor, who was a young doctor, she said, but you're too young. So I'm 50. But the average age is 51. And I can hear people shouting at the podcast at the moment, as which I nearly shouted at her and said, 50 is part of the average of 51. It's quite a wide average, that.
Yes.
And she wasn't my normal doctor, who I know very well. I've done expeditions with her before, and she knows how I tick. And so I then requested to speak to my regular doctor, who just said, come in, we'll have a chat about it. And then if we need to put you on HRT, we can. And in the summer, I went on HRT, and I felt like I've been living in a fog or a temperature inversion for about the last 4 years.
Wow.
And then this fog has I've been managed to get my head above it and see the sunlight. And my energy levels have gradually increased. My appetite has decreased, thank God. I'm eating better. I've given up alcohol. I've practically given up caffeine. I don't eat much meat anymore because I couldn't afford it during the first lockdown anyway. So I've kind of carried that on. But I think all these little things have given me my life back. And I absolutely put it down to HRT. And I know it doesn't work for everybody. And it does take a while to get the levels right. And it's not going to be, a catch-all. All my symptoms are gone. My tinnitus is quite hideous. Especially when I'm tired. I just have this sort of high-pitched ringing in my ears for what feels
it gets
like
worse when you're upset potentially as well, does it?
Yeah, stress, definitely, tiredness, all of those feelings. But it's my energy and my brain function which I've seen the most improvement. And I do still forget words. I had a compass in my hand not so long ago. I forgot the word for it. What's this? But I make a joke out of it now. Not a joke, but I'm like, oh yeah, it's my menopause. And I was in Saudi the end of November, and we were doing some sort of maths type stuff. And it was with a leadership course and I was a facilitator. But before the students arrived, we tested out all of the tasks. And the head facilitator said, well, if you need a calculator for this, then you need to go back to school. I'm like, menopausal, my brain just doesn't work like that anymore, and so I need to find ways to manage it. And if it means using a calculator, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to apologize for it, because he's an accountant, he was just joking about it, but I think it did resonate with him afterwards, because he said, as a boss and a friend and a colleague, what can I do to make your life easier? And I said, read up about the menopause, learn to, sometimes we need to do things in different ways, or just give me a little bit more space and time, but get yourself educated, I think is the most important thing, because it will affect every single man. Because if they have a woman in their life, whether it's a colleague, a sister, a mum, a grandma, what have you, whoever, they will go through the menopause at some point in their life. And every woman has different levels of symptoms. It's like having periods, isn't it? Some women have a fabulous, time in their life where they're having periods and they're all regular and it's all nice and light and fantastic. Whereas others, it's just pure hell. And that's the same with the menopause. Everybody has a different range of symptoms, different severity of symptoms. Some are very, very mild, whereas others are extreme. And I wrote a blog about it back in the summer, and I had some really interesting comments, particularly from men. It's like, I never realised brain fog was that. We always thought, oh, it's just getting old. Or tinnitus, which can be very distracting. Or, for me, I never realised that your hunger and your fullness responses are that much dictated by the hormone levels in your body, which are changing because of menopause. And it means that your body fat then comes up more around your stomach. And it's understanding all of this stuff. And then when I read up about it, I was like, oh, that's why I'm feeling like this. So I'm in a position to know how to deal with it. So, yeah.
Reading up on it has just been like a light bulb moment for me. It was talking to a couple of friends who were going through similar situations to me and who had done more homework than I had. And they put me onto some books, and so I bought the audio versions of those books, so I've been listening to those whilst I've been driving and just shouting at the stereo going, oh my God, gosh, that's me.
I know.
It's just been,
Yeah.
So my situation is I picked up a prescription last week after a telephone consultation with my GP the week before, picked up a prescription last week for HRT. And I actually said to her, is that it? I mean, I thought you were going to make me wait for months before. And she said, no, everything you're describing is sounding like you need some support. I haven't started that yet. So that was 5 days ago. And I'm still sat with this bag thinking, do I, don't I?
Start it.
Yes.
Start. Because if it doesn't work for you, at least you know.
Yeah.
But if it does work, it can be a game changer.
Yeah.
100%.
I think my biggest, I'm not getting mood swings or anything like that, getting all sorts of symptoms, but my biggest symptom, I would say, is probably joint pain. And there are times where my hips, I can hardly move. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. I'm walking along a canal, it's flat. And just 6 months ago, I was walking up and down, the hills and the mountains around us. And I don't feel like I can do it now. And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. So I'm looking forward to doing it, but there's a little bit of reticence there for me as well, like, should I be doing this? But
definitely do it. I mean, you're not drugging yourself up, you're replacing hormones that are starting to disappear, and it can just, for me, I feel like it's given me back. And I think with quite a lot of women, we are not very good at saying, at piecing stuff together with like, I'm not feeling too great, but this is the reason why. There's COVID, and there's maybe someone died in the family, or there's, the kids are at school, or blah, blah, blah. So we're very good at saying, well, it's for another reason. But if you're around midlife, there's stuff going on. Shit goes on in your body.
Doesn't it just?
Deal with it. Yeah, deal with it. I'm looking forward to speaking to you in a month to find out how you're doing. And it is not, and I absolutely say to any woman who's goes, I hope it's the same for me. It's not the magic bullet. I still have symptoms, but the symptoms that I do have are much less than they used to be. My sleep is better. I know that if I do now drink alcohol, I think I had a couple of gins on Saturday night watching Strictly Final, I felt rubbish the next day, and it's just not worth it. No. And that was 2 small gins, so the effect on my body with alcohol has, and I think also because I haven't drunk for such a long time, that's obviously going to be a bit different. But for me, the energy levels and the lack of joint pain as well, and I'm now training for an Arctic race in March, and I have the will to go training, whereas 6 months ago I would probably be asleep on the sofa most days if I wasn't working. And it's a miserable place to be, because I'm just wasting my life, and for what reason? And it was just because my hormones were completely shot. So
okay, I will message receive loud and clear.
I'm very enthusiastic about it because I've been there, I am there. And I think if I was not as strong a personality as, with this first doctor who said, oh no, you're too young. It's very bizarre.
It's very strange.
And I hadn't pursued it, or if maybe another doctor had tried to put me on antidepressants, which a lot of doctors do, which is not the answer, because that's not the cause of the problem. The symptoms are very wide ranging, but when you do put them all together, it does add up to something. And I'm not that sort of person that Googles everything and goes, I've got this, that and the other. But knowing that I had tinnitus, knowing that I had poor sleep, the brain fog, the forgetfulness, cold sweats, never knew they were something, as well as hot flushes, joint pain, all of this stuff, they're not one-off symptoms to be treated individually. There's a reason that all of that is happening. And
well, I'm looking forward to getting my life back again. Thank you, Jo. I will go and sit with the bag. And I think also what put me off was I read all the contraindications when I first picked up the prescription, and it literally opened out this leaflet and was a metre long for both boxes that I had, and they were a metre long. And I'm thinking, really? But I thought, no, okay, it says I've got to read it, so I read everything. And anyway, I'm not going to let that put me off, because I know that the risks are very minimal, and it really does tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the trouble is, it's been rammed down our throats for such a long time that HRT is a bad thing, but it's not, and I've spoken to so many doctors now and so many experts and people in the know, and they're like, we need to get rid of that thinking that HRT is a bad thing and it causes all these issues, because it can be life-changing.
Yeah.
And the majority of people, it is life-changing, and there are no side effects. But there are sorry, somebody's just come to the door.
It's all right.
So there are always going to be, it's like when you take paracetamol, for some people it may not work, but for the majority it does. So
yeah, it's finding what works for you, isn't it?
It does, absolutely. And also the doctor has prescribed it to you for a very good reason. And it's, it's not like you're taking it just for a jolly. It's like, if it can work, then brilliant. So yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, we're coming to the end, towards the end there. I'm so pleased, actually, and I'm so grateful that we've had that conversation. So thank you, Jo.
Yeah,
definitely. But yeah, so we're coming towards the end. There's a couple of things. One was, would you like to just talk us through your big challenge that you've been working on for the last few years, your 7 summits?
Yeah.
Because we've touched on it here and there, but we haven't actually really clarified what that is for the listeners.
Sure. So the 7 summits is the highest mountain on each of the 7 continents. And it was never going to be a thing for me, like all of this. It was never a thing. But until really after Everest. So before Everest, I climbed Kilimanjaro through work. So I guided on the mountain quite a lot. I had climbed Aconcagua, summited on a personal trip, and then I've been back twice working on the mountain. And then after Everest 1, the earthquake version, I went to Russia to climb Elbrus, because I needed to get back on a mountain, and Rolf had a group there, and it just seemed, the right thing to, go back to be in my happy place on the mountain. And it wasn't because it was one of the 7 summits. It just happened to fit in with schedules and everything. So after the earthquake Everest, I was very fortunate to go back the following year and summit, which was great. And then my sponsor, who had been part of the whole Everest journey, said, well, I want you to continue fundraising profile of the charity. So, write me a proposal as to what we can do next. And at that time, I'd climbed 4 of the 7 summits. So it seemed a natural progression to then try and finish the last 3. And it's not easy. I just to make it sound, I'll just, hop off to Alaska and Antarctica and Indonesia and go and climb the others. But it's never straightforward. So I went in June to 2017. I went out to Alaska and climbed Denali, which was an incredible expedition. We had a great team, and you pull a heavy sled or polk, and you carry a big rucksack, and everything is self-supported. So it's you and the team and the mountain. And I loved that style of expedition. It was I felt like I really earned my summit on that, because I'd pulled all of my stuff and the teams. And so, it was fantastic. And then, like I said, my father passed away at the end of 2017. And then my sponsor pulled out at the beginning of 2018. And I just okay, I have to draw a line under this. I had 2 mountains to go, and Vincent in Antarctica is very expensive. So I was like, well, I'm not in the right headspace to fundraise for that mountain in 2018. So I took a year off from fundraising and from my challenges, and just got on with work. And beginning of 2019, I kicked it all off again and set up this fundraising project called Joe's Mighty 90, where I was hoping to raise £90,000, of which at least 60 or 70% would go to the charity place to be, and then the rest was used for the expedition, because I wasn't going to raise the money for the charity in such a great volume without doing something hard. People don't just suddenly give you loads of money for no reason. So that all kicked off. Tried to go to Indonesia September 2019, and 24 hours before we were due to fly out, Carsten's Pyramid was closed due to civil unrest. So I was like, okay, that's fine. And then we were due to reschedule it for the beginning of 2020. In the meantime, I had raised enough money, but also put a whacking great amount of money on credit cards for Vincent, which I don't recommend, but sometimes you just got to take a bit of a punt and go for it. So I went out to Vincent with huge debts hanging around thinking, this is my only chance to do this mountain. And fortunately, we had a great weather window and we summited on the 27th of December and it was just incredible. And then we were due to go to Carstens, which would have been number 7 at beginning of March 2020. And it wasn't COVID that stopped us going, although it has done since, but the mountain was closed again due to civil unrest. That kicked off again. So the expedition is paid for. Number 7 is still there. When we will get there, and I say we, I'm going with 4 other friends who are all climbers. When we will get there, God only knows. In the meantime, so my fundraising has quietened off because the type of fundraising I do is all connected around doing the mountains. But I've raised over 45,000 for the charity, so I'm really proud of that. And also made people aware of what Place to Be do. So as soon as we get the nod to fly out to Indonesia, it will be all over my social media, trust me.
Oh, that is so exciting.
Yeah, so I don't know when it's going to happen. You know, still in touch with our agent, and he hasn't worked since September 2019, you know, doing castings. And obviously it's difficult during COVID because there's no support from them out there. So we're still in touch with him, and
it will happen when it happens.
Exactly. And I'm very much of, you know, que sera, sera. What will be, will be. It will happen at some point. It may be in the next 10 years. Maybe sooner than that. But it was very important to me to pay off my Vincent debt.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my granny passed away just before COVID hit at the beginning of 2020. And the inheritance for her has managed to clear that debt, which now means I can go and do other stuff. So it didn't feel right for me to go and do other expeditions with that debt and me asking people to help me pay for that. So I'm off to Swedish Lapland in beginning of March, fingers crossed, to do a 185 kilometre 4-day snowshoe race with a friend of mine who's 71.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I know. So, and he's the oldest Brit to have climbed any 8,000. He climbed Choyu in Tibet when he was 69. So, yeah, just
amazing.
It's amazing what you can do when you put your mind to it.
Yeah, fabulous. Oh, Jo, well, this has been absolutely incredible. I feel like I've been on this whirlwind, roller coaster sort of journey with you. And I'm sure, you know, the Head Right Out listeners will feel that too. But there's one last question, and this is the one that I ask all of my guests. Is there a Head Right Out moment that you can recount for us? Something where you have pushed yourself out of your comfort zone and you really didn't think you were able to do this, but you managed it and you came back and you benefited from it. And it might be something that you've already talked about, but do you have a Jo's Head Right Out moment?
Head Right Out moment. I think probably it was when I started my little project, Move a Mile Monday, which was the 30 miles on my birthday in March. And then a couple of months later, I did the same thing, but on a bike. So I did loops of 15 or 12 miles, had a 20-minute break, and then did another loop down in the New Forest. And I did that over a 24-hour period. And I did get 3 hours sleep on that, because trying to bike whilst you're tired in the dark is just ridiculous. So it was too dangerous.
Death wish.
And I ended up, it was. Yeah, very much so. And I ended up doing 195 miles. And I've done a lot of cycling in my time, but never more than 100 miles. So for me to do 195, I was like, oh, I can do that as well. So, and it all adds to the bank of, you know, I can. So for when I signed up to do this Arctic race, and I'm used to pulling a sled in cold environments, but I'm used to then having a lovely sleep after it.
Yeah.
And the Lapland one is not going to be like that. You know, we probably have 3 or 4 hours sleep a night because we're on a time frame and we have to finish before the 96 hours is up. And that, for me, the race isn't to beat anyone else. It's literally to get in within the time, because it's something new to me. I have most of the kit, but some of it I never used before because it's just a different environment. It's non-mountainous. It's, you know, walking in snowshoes for hours on end.
So that's gonna push you as well.
That's going to push me 100%. And even, you know, the training I'm doing for it at the moment is I'm pulling a tyre around the New Forest and various places around Salisbury, and I'm ever increasing my mileage. So I'm now over the mileage that I've ever done before with a tyre. So I'm in brand new territory now, and it's like, oh, I wonder, I'm going to have to keep pushing this because that's what the race dictates for fitness. So,
but that must feel good as well. So
it feels great.
Yeah. Will you come back and talk to us about that on another episode?
I'd love to.
Okay, brilliant. Well, Jo, I'm sorry we've got to wrap this up, but thank you so much. This has been incredible, and I love chatting to you. And I know that every time we meet, I could chat to you for hours. But thank you so much, and thank you for your honesty as well, and just really giving us an insight into some of those deeper psychological things that go on with fear and with the perimenopause. Definitely. Is there anything, Jo, that you would like to mention that you haven't had the chance or the opportunity to talk about?
No, I think I've talked enough, actually. Okay. I think, for me and the menopause side of things, I think talking about it is really important. I have a few friends who definitely turned off by the subject and have sort of drifted away. And that's fine. It's just, if it's not for them, it's not for them. And I'm not going to hold it against them. But it's not my favourite subject in the world. But when it does come up, I think it's important to talk about it to the right people. And it was actually, I was doing a business walk and talk, and I mentioned it because my doctor had just rung me about something. And this guy who was one of the clients said, well, actually, I read a book because I wanted to learn about what my wife was going through. And he recommended me this book called Menopause, which is not an easy one to say. And for me, it was a game changer, so to get that advice from a gentleman because he wanted to support his wife was brilliant. So, don't be afraid to talk about it. Not everybody is going to love what you want to say or hear what they hear. See, this is where the words...
I know what you mean. And I think everybody else will know what you mean.
Even 6 months ago, I wouldn't have been able to do this podcast because I couldn't string a sentence together. So go and get support, talk to the right people, keep banging on about it if, your doctors are saying, no, you're too young when you're not. Because it can start a lot earlier in life. I had a blood test in the end, which confirms the hormone levels in my body. And that, for me, was such a relief. And the lady on the phone at the doctor's surgery said, you're not going mad, don't worry. And to hear that was just lovely. So it then put it all in perspective. So to the ladies and the gentlemen out there, go and do some research and go and get some more support. So get your kids to read about it, make sure people are aware, and not to be so hard on yourselves. It's something we're all going to go through, and we've got to get each other's backs on this. So
brilliant. Yeah, great message. Thank you. Jo, where can we find you?
On the internet. So I have a great website, jobradshaw.co.uk. I'm on Facebook as Jo Bradshaw and Instagram as @_Jo Bradshaw, and on LinkedIn as Jo Bradshaw as well. I'm not on Twitter. It's too shouty for me.
Fair. That's fair enough. Jo Bradshaw, thank you so much for coming on Head Right Out. And I'm looking forward to us chatting again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for having me, though.
So much advice. Wow. And Jo really did inspire me to go and take my HRT tablet that night. Off air, once we had stopped recording, she just said to me, Zoe, really, you must start taking your HRT. Go and do it. And so I did. And I've been on it it's a month. It's exactly a month, I think, since we chatted. So if you would like to go and find out more about Jo, I will put all of those links in the show notes. Now, I have two little things to say before I wrap up for this episode. The first is to wish Jo so much love and so much healing for her beautiful dog, Lily. Lily has been really poorly, and actually she almost lost Lily right around Christmas time. And as a result, Jo has had to make the big decision of staying home and not going to lead the expedition that she was going to be leading on Kili. Her duty of care to Lily has come first, and I respect Jo massively for making that decision. It can't have been easy, but we wish Lily well and we wish Jo well. The other thing is something I wanted to share with Jo when I spoke to her just before Christmas, and I didn't, and I'm not sure why. I know this sounds crazy, but I think I forgot, and that's my perimenopause brain. But I actually raised some money myself when I did the Scary Skydive back in December. Previously, sort of 18 months previously, I had been raising money for Jo's Mighty 90, and it wasn't very much, but every little helps. And so I'm delighted to say that I have raised £200 for Jo. So I will be popping that into her Just Giving account in the next few days. Next week, we have an inspiring woman coming to talk to me. Her name is Maria Roberts, and she will be talking about her weight loss journey and her newfound relationship with fitness and the outdoors. It's going to be a fantastic conversation, so I hope you will join us again. Come back next week for more ideas on how you can head right out of your comfort zone. Have a great week. Head right out hugs to you all.